Okay, so this webinar is going to be primarily for kind of just getting up and running. We do have a part 2 that I hope you'll be able to attend, in which we get into more of the details of some searches and some of the distinctives of the iOS interface. But for right now, you know, in this part 1, we kind of assume that you have almost never looked at it, or maybe you've had it on your device for a while, but you've never really kind of taken it to that next level, and you want to do that. So, we won't assume anything. If you have any questions, just ask. If you go to our website, and this is part of my normal introduction anyway. If you think of a question later, of course, you can always email me or email Linda. But you know, if you have one of those, what I call in the middle of the night questions, if you'll go to our forums. Now, our forums are accessible in any from our website on any screen you have up here. Forums up at the top. I'm going to turn on pinpoint so that you can see my mouse a little bit better. That's always up here at the top. And so if you go to the forums, you'll notice down here underneath Accordance Discussions, there is a section here, Accordance for iOS, and it even is broken up into support and bug reports and feature requests for iOS, so you can go there. And we do have some employees on the other side of the world that might see your question, but we also have lots of users on the other side of the world that would definitely see your question and might be able to help with that. All right, so, and I've lost my screens. Let me get those back here in Reflector. There they are. So let's start off. First of all, if I'm going to assume that everyone has installed this already, if you're sitting here in this webinar, but maybe someone's watching this later and they haven't. So if you go to the App Store, and yours is going to be in a different location on your device. I've got mine down here in the dock, but if I go to the App Store, and then I can go to the search that's over here. So I'm having to remember to move my mouse and on my computer and tap on the screen on my iPad screen. So I'm using both hands at once here. But if I type, you know, you can just type Accordance. We called, even though we really call the iOS version Accordance Mobile because that makes more sense. We did call it in the App Store Bible Study with Accordance, just for discoverability for people who are saying, hey, I'd like to do some Bible study, and so that way they can perhaps find us a little bit more easily. But it doesn't matter which ones of these you click on, it will take you there. And then usually there's someone who's paid for an ad that's right here. But and that, you know, that's the way it is with any app that you search for. But here we are right there, and normally this would have it would say Get, I believe. So you can download Accordance and install that. Now, when you install Accordance for the first time, it will take you through a series of welcome screens, including registration screens. Now, if you're like me, I'm really bad about doing this. When I download an app, I just kind of want to get in and get going with it, and I don't pay as much attention to those introductory screens. And sometimes you can get them back, and sometimes you can't. Well, let me show you. This will kind of be our first thing here in Accordance Mobile, how to get back to those screens. If you come down here to the library icon at the bottom left of your screen, it's also the same on your iPhone. It'd be the bottom left. I'm going to do it here on the iPad though. And then I'll tell you what, I'll do it on both. Sometimes these will look a little bit different, but it's in the middle of the screen for both. This little gear icon is your settings. So if I go into my settings here, and I believe it's all the way down here at the bottom where it says Show Tutorial. Those are that same group of screens that showed up the very first time that you launched Accordance. And so, you know, it might be good to go back and look at some of these things again if you've forgotten those. And because this is a universal app that opens on, you know, we use the same app that opens on both the iPhone and the iPad. We just use those iPhone screens there, but it's all pretty much applicable. I guess that's an exception right there where there's an iPad screen there in the background. All right, I'm gonna press that skip button, which is, like I said, what I'm pretty bad about doing most of the time anyway. Anytime you're here in settings, if you tap on Done up here, it will close that. And then if you tap on Library and then close again, it'll take you back to whatever title or Bible or reference work or commentary or whatever you're reading. It will take you back to that point. Okay, so one of those screens that comes up when you run Accordance Mobile for the first time is one that allows you to either sign in or to register. So if you have never used Accordance on any platform before, you can register, and that not only gives you there are a number of titles that come with Accordance, but when you register, you get more titles and more Bibles, more commentaries, reference works, and so forth. And it's a pretty decent collection that's free. I mean, if you just use that free version and never did anything else, it would be a pretty good Bible study tool, especially since there's like the ESV with Strong's, which I'm going to show you in just a moment. In fact, I'm going to show you how to make any Bible your default. But one of the first things that you'd want to do after you've either signed up or if you already have an Accordance account signed in is you'd want to come back to that library icon that's down here, and you can go to Easy Install. This is our Easy Install icon. It's just a little down arrow showing that you're downloading content. So when I tap on Easy Install, it will show me everything that is in my Accordance library that I haven't installed already. And so I actually have a lot of content installed here, but I don't think that I've updated my iPad in the last probably the last 4 or 5 weeks. Looks like, well, looking at this, it looks like I haven't updated it since SBL in November. But you have this may be a much longer list if you have a lot of titles that you don't have installed. I usually try to keep most Accordance content on mine installed. But what I can do here is, I can do one of two things. Notice that there are 2 icons here. One is that Easy Install single down arrow, and then the other one, and I don't have any way to enlarge this for you, unfortunately. But other than maybe I can make the. I was going to try to make the actual iPad a little bit larger here on the screen, but I'm not able to do that for whatever reason. Let me check one setting here. Maybe I can after all here. Yeah, there we go. Now I can move it. So let me see if I can adjust that. No, it's still not allowing me to adjust the size. All right, I won't waste any more time on that. But this second icon here, if I were to press that right now, it would just install everything in the list. Now, you may not want everything in the list installed, so you can come here, and I'm just doing this randomly. You can select just the things that you want, and you can tap on this button. None of these are very large, 11 megabytes total, so it shows you the titles that are downloading as they're coming in here, and then it will then again double check what you've got installed against what is in your account. But this allows you just to download what you want based on how much space you have on your device. I will say that a lot of times people are worried about, well, how much space will something like Bible software take up? If you're just installing biblical text and some text commentaries and things like that, notice that these files right here are very small. The largest one here is the Baker Exegetical Commentary on the New Testament, 48 megabytes, but that's for 17 volumes. So most things that are just text-based aren't that large, and so you can put a lot of content, a lot of journals, a lot of commentaries, and things like that on a device based on how much room that you have. Now, the other thing I want to show you before we leave this Easy Install page is the updates page down here, or the updates command. So if I tap on updates, what it will do is it will tell me whether or not I have any of the titles that I've already got installed in my Accordance library on my device, if there have been any updates to them. For instance, if you come across a spelling error, I came across yesterday, just a weird spacing error. There was an extra space between a word and a period. And, we get these electronic texts and we go through them and we mark them for what kind of content they are. But sometimes that kind of stuff will slip by. It's real easy to do if it's in the original. So I just sent that in as a correction report. I'll show you how to do that because you can now do that from the mobile device. but you can send in a correction report. And so once the Accordance developers get those correction reports, they make those corrections, and then they will they'll update a title here. And so again, it's the same principle. I can download everything by hitting this icon, or I can download just one title or two titles, whatever I've checked with this one. I'm going to do that because I'm going to update our ESV, because I'm going to be using that. So we'll download that ESV. It shouldn't take here but a few seconds to download, and then once that is there, we're ready to go. Now, I would say if you have a very large library and you want to move everything over on your home network Wi-Fi rather than downloading from the internet, there is a way to do that. That's part of our Part 2 webinar. I'll be showing that off, how you can do that. But the other thing that I have done before is just at home Wi-Fi. I've just set this on a new install. I've just hit this at night and gone to bed, and I get up in the morning and everything is there for me. So I'm going to hit done, and that's going to take me back out to this screen, and I want to spend a couple of minutes on this screen. If you ever get stuck in Accordance, you aren't sure how to do something, and maybe as a first try before you go to the forums, maybe you just want to look in help. This is the help file, and Accordance, both Accordance Mobile and Accordance for Windows and Macintosh have really extensive help files. It's really become our manual. It's very detailed. There's a lot of how-to and step-by-step instructions. It's based in HTML files. Now, in Accordance 12 for Windows and Macintosh, those are already on your system. But on the mobile version, because we're not wanting to put something like that extra on your system, because sometimes there's so little room, that one actually does go out to our website. But you can come here to Table of Contents, and here's install, update, and sync. And as I drill down and I go to some of these sections here, I'm just kind of doing it randomly. One thing that you'll notice is that there's step-by-step instructions here. Open the App Store app, tap search, and enter the it's step-by-step for you to do, and there's even screenshots that will show you what what it should look like, basically, based on what it is that you're doing. And so we spend a lot of time trying to make this as friendly as possible. So I wanted you to know that was there. Let me come back here to Accordance. And so I want to show you something else here on this screen, and that's our settings, our preferences. This little gear icon, which we're already there briefly, but I want us to come back to that in a minute. And so if you've used Accordance for a while, you already know about these distinctions, text and tools, but sometimes folks don't quite know the differences between them. We make a distinction between what could be considered versified primary text, and I'm talking about primarily the Bible, obviously, but also works ancient text like Josephus or Philo or the Apostolic Fathers, or some of the rabbinic writings, Dead Sea Scrolls, anything that's an ancient primary text, regardless of whether it's in an original language form like Hebrew or Greek, or whether it's in translation. That's what we're calling a text. And then we're calling a tool everything else. So whether that's a commentary, a lexicon, or another reference work, a monograph, a journal, that's going to fall under this very broad category of tools. And we do have separate settings for both of them. Now, I'm not going to go through all of these, but let me show you a few that you might want to pay attention to. And I'm going to make some changes even so that things will show up a little bit easier here on our screen. All right, so first of all, how do you want a biblical text to show up? I've got mine set on paragraphs. And it's funny, I tend to do paragraphs on the mobile, and I do paragraphs with space on Windows and Macintosh, just maybe because I have more screen that way. But a lot of people like each verse separated by itself. You can do that. You can have a space between each one. So however you want to do that, You just touch it. You'll see a little check mark by that, and it will be there. You can choose what font that you want the text to be in. Now this is set here on the accordance font. That accordance font is very much like a Times New Roman for English, but it also contains Greek and Hebrew and Syriac and Arabic and Uncial and a number of our in-house fonts. But now technically and it won't override those original languages. But if you want to, for instance, I like a font that I like a lot is Palatino. I just think that's a good looking font. It's got a really nice looking italics. But whatever you want to put that on, it doesn't matter. You can do that. And then text size, I'm going to make this larger for our purposes today for our webinar. I'm going to jump from 21 to 27, and so that will allow us to see our content a little bit better. And then you can change. Oh, let me show you. This reference size has to do with those reference numbers. I always recommend having your reference numbers smaller than your text. And so let me go here on the iPad, and yeah, and I've done that here. You can see that I have the text is larger than what the reference is. I like that to be a little bit smaller. So against the 2710 is probably too small. So I'm going to put that at 18 for our purposes today. And you can change whatever color you want. You can make the references superscript, which is turned on, I think, by default. You can change your background color to whatever you like to. If you just want a strict black text against white, you can choose white. I've got book chosen, which is kind of an off-white, kind of a very mild beige, perhaps. But you can set that however you want. The leading, I think probably we need to change that, but that's a very old typographical term that, because used to, when they were setting type by hand, they would put strips of lead between the lines. So according to how much space you want between the lines of text, you can adjust that here. And think of like on a word processor or typewriters, if anyone still uses those, single space versus double spaced. That's leading. That's that space between the lines. On a lot of mobile devices, I keep mine turned all the way down. I kind of like to have as much text on the screen as I can, but you can adjust that however you want to. We're going to come back to page turning. You hold that thought. That's something new in Accordance Mobile 2.6. The other thing that some people want to do is to hide the red lettering. Some people really like the red lettering. If you were to look at my wife's iPad, she's got red lettering on, but I tend to turn it off. I tend to turn it off rather, because when I always like to say, when the gospel writer went to write his gospel, he didn't change ink colors for every time that he was writing the words of Christ. And sometimes it can get interpretive, such as in John chapter 3, where Jesus is talking to Nicodemus. Obviously, there are some verses in there where we know it's Jesus talking. But for instance, a verse like John 3:16, is that Jesus's words, or is that John's commentary on Jesus's words? And you'll find different approaches to that in different publishers. Well, some will make that red, some won't. So anyway, I just turn it off. You can do whatever you want to, though, because it's yours. And then down here, list versus grid for your verse chooser. That's when you're up here, and if you look over here at the iPhone, for instance, it's this. Here's our verse chooser, or if we're in a reference work, it would be a table of contents. But when I tap on that, okay, this is the list view. And so if it's in list view, I come here and I select whatever I want to that way. I really prefer it to be on grid. And so I'll show you as soon as we get back to the screen what the grid looks like. I think it's more compact, and you don't have to do all this scrolling like you see there. Okay, so that's a few of the things on text preferences. Make sure that you tap save when you go out of here, so that it does save those. The tool display, very similar. I'm going to just turn those. I'm going to turn that up a little bit, like I did over here, so that you can see it a little bit better. I've got a little bit different background color on there, sky. My leading, I'm going to pull my leading down a little bit. And again, hold the thought on page turning. We'll come back to that. Here you have things such as picture size. So if you're looking at maybe our photo guide or something like that, you can adjust what size the pictures are. I tend to make mine a little bit larger because I like to see as much as I can without actually having to tap on it and go to full screen. The other thing down here for hypertext, and this is really important, text and alt text. When you look at a verse reference, for instance, maybe you're in a lexicon and you look at that, it has a verse reference, and you're just going to want to touch it. You don't want to necessarily go to it. You just want to see it. This determines what Bible that's going to show up in. Now, you could make this the Hebrew Bible, you could make this the Greek New Testament, just whatever you wanted to make that. But if you want to change that, you can come out here and change that to whatever you want. The alt text, though, is the second text it's going to look in if it can't find it in this text. And so I tend to put something like the NRSV with Strong's. You could also do the KJV with Apocrypha, or KJV Apocrypha, which everyone should have. But for instance, if I'm in a lexicon and maybe it refers to First Maccabees or something, or something like that, if I tap on that, that's not going to show up in the ESV, but the NRSV it would show up in. So so that's just kind of a larger corpus. If you're doing a lot of work though in the pseudepigrapha, you could make that alt text the pseudepigrapha. Again, just whatever you want to do with your setup. Okay, so I'm gonna do that. A couple of other little settings here. The flex search versus exact search we'll look at next time. I think everyone should be defaulted to flex, but I tend to turn mine off. That'll be in part 2. Trying to think if there's any other thing. If you aren't finding your content showing up in easy install, come up here to Accordance account, click on that, and it will show you what account that you're in, and make sure that you're logged in correctly. I've already shown you this tutorial. If you ever want to know, am I running the latest version, you want to compare that. So I'm running 2.6.2 here, and I don't remember if that's a beta build or if that's the release build. Sometimes I have betas on here. But anyway, that's kind of some preferences for getting us up and going. Any questions on that before we kind of jump back out a level? All right. Well, if there's no questions here, I want to show you one other thing. If you want to, anytime that, well, let me start by going out to a text here. Let's say I'm out here, I've been reading the Bible, but I want to go in here and find something in my library. So I click on that library icon down here again. This first screen that shows up is recently opened. So these are things that I've had open, in the last, I don't know how far back it goes. I really don't. You can clear it right here if you want to. If you don't want anyone to know you've been reading the pseudepigrapha or something, you can clear that if you want to. But if I click library over here again, this takes me to some folders with some of my other content in my library. Now, you remember I told you that distinction between text and tools earlier. So here's text. All right. Here is everything else. All these things that are tools are right here. Now, again, those of you who have been with Accordance for a long time, you'll recognize some of these categories, such as devotionals, English tools, Greek tools, Hebrew tools. This is a little bit, our mobile versions tend to stay behind our desktop version, but I believe sometime in the next few weeks, hopefully we're going to see some of this updated to the same library categories that are found in Accordance 12. But for right now, one thing I want to show you is how to set your default text. And so if I click on text here, this will take me to all of my again, these are versified primary text, Bible, Dead Sea Scrolls, pseudepigrapha, Josephus, Philo, anything that would fall into these categories, regardless of whether it's Hebrew, Greek, English, French, it doesn't matter if it's original language or translation, it's going to be here in this category. And so if you want to make one of these your default text, okay, here's how you would do this in Accordance Mobile. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to make the ESV my default because I know for a fact that everyone has the ESV. And when we get to part 2 on the next time we meet for a webinar, that'll become more necessary because I'll do some searches using the ESV, and that way I can know everyone can follow with me. So what you do is you come up here and you tap on Edit. So I tapped Edit, and now you see these little handles that are right here. I can grab any of these, and all I have to do is move them to the top. Okay, so I you know, again, if I wanted the Hebrew Bible to be my kind of my default text, I can move that to the top, whatever I want to do. But I'm going to leave that with the ESV, and I'm going to choose Done. All right. If you can't find one of the texts that you know you have, you can always go here and you can search. You know, you can type something like NKJ to find the New King James, just whatever you want to do. If I'm going to hit cancel here, and I'm going to go back out to my library. With lexicons, same thing here to make a default lexicon. If you're doing a lot of Greek or Hebrew work, you want to go here to Greek tools, and you know, again, whatever is up there at the top is going to be your default, like for instant details and that kind of thing. So you know, again, I can just go to Edit, and maybe I want the LSJ to be my default. I can just grab that and I can put that up there. I tend to like BDAG up there, but just whatever you want to be your default, you can do that. So I hit Done with that, and then I'm going to back out. Same would work with the Hebrew. You can go in there and set your default as well. All right, so I'm going to close that. Do we have any questions before I talk a little bit about the main interface? All right, I'm also drinking coffee here, so if you hear anything, if you hear any liquid pouring here, I'm pouring some more coffee into my mug out of my thermos here. There are two views for the main screen. One shows the interface, and one is more of a kind of a reading view. So right now, what we're looking at has the interface. And I say it has the interface because, for instance, you can see the verse chooser. You can see this will turn on automatic highlighting, which I'll show you in a moment. Basically, anything that's lit up in blue, I could touch, and it would do something. Okay, so that has the interface. But if I kind of tap here in the, you know, somewhere down here in the text itself, this takes me to more of my reading view. And so now that interface kind of fades to the background, and I can just use the I can just read from the text as is. I'm going to switch here to the ESV, and wow, my leading may be too close there for that size. So so here I'll show you this. This is one of our first tricks. If you want to control some of those display settings, you know, this is kind of a universal icon. This small a and large A that allows you to adjust the text. So I'm going to tap on that first, and you see some things here that are automatic, but if I want to see all the display settings, and this is the display settings just for the ESV, so this isn't a universal override like we were seeing in the preferences a while ago. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull my leading up a little bit. You see down here this little control. I'm going to pull that up a little bit. I'm going to say Done, and that's a little bit more readable for this kind of text size.
Rick,
okay?
I have a question.
Yes.
Mark.
Sure.
Mark has a question.
Go ahead, Mark.
When we were playing around with and I was following you on the all those cool little things we were adjusting.
Yes.
I adjusted something, and now when I'm looking at my text, I have it's almost like double spaced in between each line.
Yes. So probably it's the leading. So you know, again, if you go in here to the settings. And if you're talking about like a biblical text, so it'd be under text. Look at this control right here and see what that's on, if it's way out there. Now I will say there are some fonts that are just naturally have a lot of space between the lines. That could also affect you too. If you chose a font that was maybe a little bit different, that could affect it as well.
Okay.
But if you adjust the leading, does that fix it?
It's making it better, so I'll keep moving it more to the right.
Yeah. Yes. Well, if you move it, to the right, it'll put more. So just,
Oh.
but that's probably what's causing it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right.
Raymond has a
Yes.
question.
Go ahead.
Is there I got confused here. Is there a different font for the Hebrew besides Yehudit?
Well, no, is the short answer to that question. And part of that has to do with the controls of iOS. And so, if I look here, for instance, go to my settings, and well, I tell you what, let's do it this way. Let's go to a Hebrew text. So if I've got my Hebrew Bible open here, and I'm gonna close that double pane. So I'm looking just here at this. You'll notice it says text font Yehudit right here, and this is basically an override. This is using our internal font, but it has to do with basically it has to do with what iOS will let you do, because there are like certain internal fonts that are there. This is even a greater challenge in Android, which has much fewer choices for fonts. So we do have built within the app our accordance fonts, including Yehudit. But the great part of this is, if I were to come here and select a text, and I'm going to choose copy here. So this is, we'll make this into a lesson too. Let me show you what I did first. For those who haven't done this before, I grabbed a word here. It's called a tap and hold, and then I grabbed this little handle, and I come out here and I grab some text. So if I were to hit on choose copy right here, that's not going to copy Yehudit. Okay, that's going to copy. Basically the Unicode information. So if I'm in a word processor here, let's pull up a word processor, and let me see if I can maybe just create a new document.
Yeah, and then you can just paste it because of the Unicode.
Yeah, so yeah, right. So I'm going to paste this, and when I paste it, let me make this to where you can see it a little bit larger. Notice that what it has, what it's done basically is it's put it in the, it's taken that Unicode information and it's put it in whatever that default font is right there, which is, I don't know, it's Arial. It's Arial. So any of these fonts are going to be Unicode fonts, I believe. So you can adjust that based on whatever word processor you're in or wherever you're placing that. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
But as far as display, it's just going to display in that internal accordance font while you're in accordance.
Yeah.
All right. I'm gonna also, let me show you another thing here that you can do. You can switch between translations or Bibles or text by just tapping here on this, and notice that came up with my text. And so I'm going to switch back there to the ESV again. I know that we all have the ESV, so I'm going to primarily keep it on that. But then you've already seen this table of contents, but this is the grid view that I was talking about earlier. That's different from what I had over here on my iPhone. My iPhone is using that list view. I have the grid view set here on my iPad, and I really prefer the grid, because I can just tap there, and I think that's easier than scrolling through that, unless there's just a very short table of contents, basically. Now this little circle here that you see here was new, I think around version 2.5 perhaps. It may be off by default. If it's on, it has the little ring around it. If it's off, it doesn't, but that's basically for highlighting. Now there's two different ways. There's actually three ways to highlight. In fact, I've got a how-to video coming out pretty soon for Accordance Mobile 3 ways to highlight, but I'm going to show you 2 of them right now at the moment. One way is to do what I did a moment ago, to do a tap and hold, and just, I can come out here and select this text, and from, I believe this is called the action bar. From this action bar, I can choose copy. And so when I choose copy, that's going to, and it didn't do anything. That's interesting. Let's try it again. So I'm going to come here, I select that, I choose copy. That's not right. I don't know why it's not highlighting my content. It should oh no, I'm hitting copy instead of highlight. Duh, I'm hitting the wrong thing. We'll edit that out of the video if we post it. Okay, so you select your text and you hit highlight. I was just stuck on the wrong option. And now when you do this for the first time, it'll ask you, well, what color do you want here? And so you can choose a yellow or pink or green or whatever you want to do. But if you don't want to have to go to all that trouble every time, what you can do is where you have this, it's going to always show the last color that you had. If I tap that, the little circle appears around it, which turns it on automatically. And now when I highlight, I can just tap and I can just start dragging my finger, and a little small interface will be there if I want to change that, but I don't have to. I can just tap somewhere else in the screen and make that go away. But basically, it's a tap and drag because the automatic highlighting is turned on there. And by the same token, if I tap anywhere in a previous highlight, and I want to clear that, I can choose, you see where it says clear there, I can tap clear and that will go away. Or if I do a tap and drag like this, I can choose clear, and then it did not do anything. Let's try that again. I think the clear is really just to cancel. Yeah, I think that's what that's for. Wow, I don't know what happened there. That's definitely, yeah, that was a good place to cancel. But that looks like a bug, doesn't it? I don't know why that's happening. Interesting. But yeah, if you decide, oh, I didn't really mean to do that, I can hit the cancel and it can remove that there. Now, a couple of things about highlighting that I should point out. That first of all, if I pull in a parallel text, and I'm going to show you how to do that right now. If I tap in here in the screen to get my interface back up, this little icon right here opens up a parallel pane. So now I've got a parallel pane open. I'm in Ephesians, so and my parallel pane was set for the Hebrew. So let me switch this. Let's switch that. Let's do a translation for the moment. If what you'll notice, where did my highlighting go? There we go. What you'll notice is the highlighting that appears on the left side is not appearing on the right side, and that's because it's 2 separate versions, and I only highlighted specific text. However, if I were to highlight all the text in the verse, then it would show up on any Bible that I pull up, even if I pull it up later. And a quick way to highlight the entire verse, what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight the entire verse of Ephesians 3:4. And so you see the 4 right here. I'm going to just tap and hold on the 4, and this window comes up, and so this allows me to highlight the verse. Now and it's showing me my recents, but I can do colors, and we're not going to get into it today, but you also have symbols that you can add into the text as well. Let's do that in a different color. So we're going to make that turquoise. Now notice what happened. Now the New King James is also, that entire verse is highlighted in that same color turquoise. And in fact, if I were to switch even over to the Greek New Testament, that is also going to be, because I told Accordance not to just highlight a few words, but to highlight that entire verse. And so that highlight is going to be there regardless of which Bible that I have open. As long as it has Ephesians 3:4, it's going to have that verse highlighted until I remove it. Okay. And you can play around with this automatic highlighting feature if you find yourself highlighting a lot by accident and you don't want to do that, or you just prefer to do it the other way. You can just tap on it and turn it off. Okay. For the moment, I'm going to close
Rick,
our parallel. Yes.
how would you clear multiple highlights at once? Like all of your highlights. How would you clear all of your highlights?
If there is a way, I'm not sure.
Okay. All right.
If someone knows, they can tell me.
Okay, thanks.
But yeah, I'm not sure
Okay.
how to do that. I just know how to do them one at a time. But there may be a way. A lot of times there's a way, and just because I don't know it off the top of my head doesn't mean that it's not there somewhere. All right, so I'm gonna close our parallel pane for the moment, and we're just right back here. Now I showed you already this that you can change to whatever text that you want by just tapping that right up at the top. I've shown you some of the features here in the text settings, but I want to show you a couple of other things while we're there.
Before we continue, John has a question.
Yes, go ahead, John.
Hey, Rick.
Hey.
If you use style command,
can you maybe speak up a little bit? I can barely hear you.
if you use your style, your command that says style, you can find all the highlights for every kind of highlight there is. You can pick one of them if you want to pick one of them, like the turquoise underline. And once you find all of them, you can click to the right, like you're picking the next verse, and select all of them. Then you hit clear. They're all cleared.
Okay, and that works in the mobile version too.
Yeah, I did it on my iPad and my phone both.
Fantastic, fantastic. So you're teaching me.
I sent an email to Linda last night, and I documented it to her how to do that.
That's great. And so I tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to save that. I'll demonstrate that next week because we're going to talk a little bit about some of the search commands. So I don't know if it's next. Whenever part 2 is scheduled, I'm not sure if that's next week or later, but whenever part 2 is scheduled, that would be a great one for me to demo when I do the search commands. So thank you very much, John.
You're welcome, sir.
All right.
Sue has a question. How can I change book selection options from scrolling to rectangles?
How can I change?
Okay.
So up here in the first chooser. So all you do is you go to your settings, and so this little gear icon down here, and it's just the difference between where did it go? It's in text display. We were there earlier. In text display, you just choose between list or grid. So over here, I've got the list, and on the iPad, I had the grid. So it's you can choose whichever one of those that you want. Okay. So coming back here to the text settings, let me show you a couple of other things here real quick. You can do the things that you would assume you'd be able to, such as, and it's not going to show up here on your screen through Reflector, but when I'm looking at my iPad here, the screen's getting darker as I do that. You just have to take my word on it. I can make the font larger or smaller, and again, this is just for this ESV right here. It's not; these are not overriding everything. This is just for the ESV. I can put on nighttime mode on my text, which is I'm not kidding, happened to me just last night. I'm reading in bed, and my wife at one point says, "Your screen is very bright. I'm trying to sleep." She said it nicer than I just made out, but that's what nighttime mode is made for. But it's easier than saying, "Well, honey, why don't you turn over the other direction?" That may not go over well. So you can switch to day or night. When you're on the night, it doesn't project as much light into a room, and sometimes it's easier on the eyes as well, based on the setting that you're in. I've already shown you the text font and text color and background color, but I want to show you interlinear here. If I turn on interlinear, look what it does. It comes here, it goes into an automatic interlinear mode. Now, I should point out we have to be using a Bible that like if it's a translation that has Strong's or the Goodrich-Kohlenberger numbers, and it's a Strong's, text, if it has an S after the end of it, ESVS, for S is for Strong's, that means it's got Strong's numbers after it, and because of that, it will show us the underlying Greek or Hebrew. And this, you've got this even in the free version, of Accordance, because that ESV with Strong's is there. And based on some of the, you may not see every line, you certainly won't see every translation that I've got showing here. But here's the thing, you can come in here and you see this little arrow over here. If you tap that arrow where I can see more, this allows me to turn different options on and off in the interlinear view. Okay, so I can, anything that I have access to in my library, I can turn on or off. Maybe I won't, let's turn on word transliteration. Maybe I'm not sure of the pronunciation. And so here, it just added this line right here, putting this into English, a transliteration of these Greek words. So you can add whatever you want there to turn those on and off. All right, I'm going to turn our interlinear view off to get us back here. And this is a new feature in 2.6, page turning. Now, I'll tell you, most of the time when I'm reading on my devices, I still kind of like this. This is scrolling, but some people like to turn a page. And so you can come in here and come into your settings, and I can turn on page turning, and now it does this. Okay, now it does this, and I can try as much as I want to move it up and down. I'm trying that, you can't tell, but I'm moving my finger up and down the screen, and it just won't scroll. It will only go back and forth like this. Okay, that's page turning. Now, if you remembered when we were in the settings for tools, page turning was also there. If I turn it on there, it's a universal override. So it's basically, it's according to what, if you always want page turning, turn it on there. If you want it text by text, turn it on right here. There is one limitation right now that will be addressed in a future update. Right now, if you have a second text up here, and so I'm going to tap this button down here to open up a parallel view. If I have this open, of course, the text on the right will scroll with it, or I can scroll from the one on the right, and the one on the left will keep up with it. Okay, that's fine. But if I come over here and I tap page turning, right now it's limited to one text at a time. So that will be addressed in a later update. We'll make it to where you can have 2 at a time. But that's just something to keep in mind, and that might be to your advantage to just turn them on a text by text basis. And I should also point out here too, this works not just in the text, it also works in the tools. So if let me open up a tool here that I've had open. Well, here we go. Here's the photo guide overview. Right now it's on scroll, but if I come in here to these settings and I turn on the page turning, now this is like that. Okay, so I'm going to turn that back off, and I'll go back to our ESV screen. I'm going to turn that parallel pane on again. I'm going to try to. My interface. Oh, it's because I've got the page turning turned on. That was a good error that I made there. If you go to turn on that second pane and the icon just doesn't appear down here, that means you have page turning turned on. So let me turn it off. Now it shows up. Okay, so I'm going to open up that second pane, and I want to take you right up here for the moment. Right up here, if I tap on this where it says GNT 228, I get 3 different options of things that I can put in parallel with my main text. You remember that over here, I can just choose from other text. If I had that photo guide open, I could just choose from those kinds of reference works. But in this parallel pane, I can choose from 3 things. I can choose from text, which is what you saw when I pulled down the menu from here, or I can, where you see this little icon that has a 1-to-1, 1:1. These are reference works. These are any reference work that is arranged around Bible verses, such as a commentary or study Bible notes, or translator notes, or an apparatus for, say, the Hebrew Bible or the Greek New Testament. Any reference work that's arranged around those verses is going to be here. So, for instance, I can tap on the Tyndale commentary, and so now I have the Tyndale commentary beside the biblical text. And as I scroll the biblical text, what you'll notice is that the Tyndale commentary is keeping up with that. So it's going to keep up with that as well. The third option over here, the third option are these are notes. So if you have notes that you've taken on the Bible, you can include these right here as well. All right. So we'll talk more about notes next week. All right. Now let me show you this icon right down here. This basically is to change the orientation of your text. If I have my iPad like this, this is great. But if I were to, I'm going to remove it from its keyboard that I've got it on here for a moment. And if I were to turn it, and this should hopefully go with me here, and it didn't. That may be the iPad's fault. Not there we go. Now it did. It even switched sides with the iPhone. Maybe I don't want it like that. Maybe if I tap on this orientation button, I can put the text like this. I can put that one on top of the other. Now it's still going to do the same type of scrolling along with the text, just like you see here. Okay. But it's for whatever you want. Some folks will call this Bible study mode. If you have if you have I'm sorry, not Bible study, but study Bible mode. If you have a study Bible, in print, usually those notes are down there at the bottom, and so you can do that. But you can adjust that however you want. I'm going to put that back here on my keyboard. I'm going to hit that button again to switch it back, and notice this. Notice that I can even control the widths of these panes, and I can do that with this little icon right here, this little handle I can take. And so if I'm spending more time in the commentary, maybe I would want to set it up like this. However it works best for you, you can do that. Now you see some icons down here, down arrow and up arrow at the moment. So if I go to hit this down arrow, that's going to take me that's going to take me chapter by chapter in the text is what it's doing. And then I'm going chapter by chapter. If I want to go back to where I was before, I can tap on these arrows right here, forward and backward, especially if I had gone to some place in the table of contents, or if I had done a search or something. And by the way, these work differently for a search. If I'm let me come out here again, and let's go to the photo guide. And even though we're covering searches more next week, let me do a search real quick. I'm sure I can find the word Israel in the photo guide, and I'm going to switch it from entry to just English content. And so I'm going to search for that. Let's see. There we go. Now those arrows that are down there at the bottom are going between hits, and my hits are in red. So it's going between each instance of that word Israel that was found. So those arrows will change a little bit based on what you're searching for. I keep tapping on the wrong thing there. Okay, I'm going to switch back to our biblical text, and we'll go back here to our ESV. All right. But that's the primary interface kind of going around. And I know we're going a little bit over the hour, but we started a little bit late because of our issues with GoToMeeting. So I'm going to go a little bit over and show you a few more things. You saw earlier this action bar that came up when I tapped and held onto a word. Well, not only does the action bar come up, but if you have one of these Bibles with either Strong's numbers, or you have a Hebrew or Greek text that's morphologically tagged, you also get in your instant details, you get dictionary information. This is telling me Strong's number. The Greek word, this is because it's an English text. It's giving me It's giving me the Mouth's Greek Dictionary. Now, if I was in, let's go back to our Greek New Testament here. I mean, you saw earlier where I was playing around with the lexicon. You know, and I said that I preferred my default lexicon to be BDAG. So what you see here is when I hold down on that word, it takes me to that entry in BDAG. And so if I want to see more than just what's here in the instant details, I can do that as well. I can come here to amplify, and I can, if I go to amplify, and then lexeme basically just means lexical entry, and what it does, it takes me to Gnosko in the BDAG lexicon. It's just taken me there, and now I can see the full entry, and everything, of course, is hyperlinked. We talked about those hyperlinks earlier. So if I remember, we set the text and alt text. So from here in the lexicon, if I tap and hold on a word, I get that verse in the instant details there. But notice right here, here I've got a Maccabees reference, and so this is why I put my alt text for something that would have the Maccabees. And again, if you're doing a lot of Greek work, you could put the Septuagint there if you wanted to. But here I've got from the NRSV, because that, Accordance basically looked at the ESV. It didn't see fourth Maccabees, so it jumped to the NRSV, and it looked at it there. Okay. Now this little arrow that's up here tells me, hey, you can go back. You can go back to where you were before. And so this is where we started. Now I'll go back to our ESV, and I'm going to just hold down another word. Most of these things that I do, by the way, these words or phrases that I select and hold down, I'm just doing randomly. Don't read any hidden meaning into them or anything like that. But a couple of other things here on the action bar. You've already seen copy, you've seen highlights, you've seen clear. We also have share. So if this just brings in the iOS share sheets. So if I want to, and maybe I wouldn't want to do the word, maybe I'd want to do a verse, and send that in a message, or I can mail it. Anything that basically that you can put a share sheet, or that you can share in iOS that's up here. You can, if you go to if you look at the at accordance on Twitter, you'll see lots of people will send verses to Twitter, and they choose to leave at accordance in there, which we love. That's good advertising for us. But they've done something like that. You can do them to Facebook. If you're in a reference work and you want to save some content for later study, of course, in Accordance 12 we have stacks. We don't have stacks yet in Accordance Mobile, but you could always save to something like Evernote. So if I'm here and I want to take this content here, I'm just grabbing this randomly, and I say share, and I can come here to Evernote. That will save that content, and I can choose whatever whatever folder in Evernote that I want to put that in, or whatever I want to do with that. I'm going to cancel on that, so I'm not wondering why I have that note later. But you can do anything like that. That's also another place, if you come here to share, that is another place that you can copy as well. You can create a reading list in iOS for that. You may have other options on your in iOS that you can add to some of these things that are here as well. But that's the share feature. So if I'm going to come here to a word again, amplify just allows you to do a search for this particular word in something else. So if I can do search or amplify. If I do search here, it searched for that word in the Tyndale commentary. If I do it over here in, my search is here in the instant details when I'm in a biblical text, because that's going to ask me, well, because it's the ESV with Strong's, do I want to search for that word or that key number? We'll look at that in part 2. But if I'm in something like this over in a reference work, I can also choose amplify for that as well. And so here I've searched in the Easton Bible Dictionary, which is probably my topmost reference work dictionary in there. I think I usually keep that on Easton because I know that everyone has Easton when I'm using that as an example. And I'll try to give a specific example next week, or I'm sorry, in the next session for that. But I'm not going to go into too much detail with it right now. A couple other things that we have here. I can type a note. We'll talk about notes in part 2. I can add a bookmark, and you know, if I add a bookmark to this, so you know, I bookmarked verse 6. You know, where are those bookmarks kept? You know, I can always come here to my library, and I'm going to go out here to library, and notice that the very last section there is my bookmarks. And if I go all the way down here to the bottom, you see ESV with Strong's 1 John 2:6. That's where I was. So it bookmarked there, and so I can tap on that. Takes me right back there to where I was. If I was reading from another text and I want to go back to that, notice what it did. I tapped on that arrow and it took me back to the ESV next to my Tyndale commentary, which is where I started. Okay. See, I think we had one other thing there in the report correction. That's our final one there. If you do see something that you know is not correct, you can tap on report correction, and that will open up a little email slide, and you can send that. It'll go automatically to corrections at Accordance Bible. We'll say not really demo for webinar. And so I just sent that to us. So that's whoever reads those is going to find that, and hopefully they'll see my comment and not try to correct commandments there or anything like that. So that's taking us primarily through most of part 1. I'm just trying to be sensitive to time. Let me show you one other quick thing, and then I'll open it up for any other questions. But if I go down here to my library in the bottom left, one other thing I wanted to show you was we do have the store. Now the store has kind of been hit or miss at times with what we've had in it, and you know, and is it better to buy it here, or is it better to buy a title on our website? And honestly, most of the time it's been better to purchase something from our website, especially our sales. We don't have everything here. I have no idea why. Okay, there, now everything is loaded. I guess that was just waiting on the internet for that to come in. We don't have everything that we offer here because anything that we sell through the iOS app, Apple wants a 30% cut. And on some items, we pay more than 30% royalty, and we would take a loss to do that. So we can't put everything in there because of royalties. But we do put some things in there. And one of the things that I've been in some recent discussions, you know, right now we have some featured things. I don't think that well, mine says purchase, so I don't see a sale price here. But what we are going to be doing, we are going to be offering some App Store only sales. So you might want to. This is probably one right here. The Biblical Imagination series with music by Michael Card. Now again, mine says purchased. It's because I've got it here in my library. But there should be a sale price on there that's reflected here and not on our website. So you could buy it here for a little bit less of a cost than what you would get it otherwise. So this is something we want to pay more attention to in 2018. So you might want to check there every once in a while. But as long as you're logged in, that will be tied to your account, and it doesn't matter which device you're on, it should show up there. All right, that kind of brings us to the end.